My Lords. My Lords, first of all, I'm very sympathetic to Amendments 62 and 107, but I'm rising to speak, which I've spoken on this topic several times, about the issue of mental health, and really want to oppose Amendments 63, 114 and 115 on mental health provision. One concern I have is the focus on creating a duty on the Secretary of State of Education to give financial assistance and set up consultations and reporting mechanisms on mental health and well-being. I don't think it's the job of the Education Minister to have this role, and I think this focus could well incentivise schools to focus too much on mental health. I think it's an inappropriate prioritisation of the mental health issue by schools and muddles up the responsibility of schools and the NHS and CAMS. And I would like to see more done for young people by the NHS, but I'm trying to separate those things out. But my main point remains that I've argued before, that there's a danger that if adults in schools continue to make the focus on mental health, there's a danger that young people will interpret the undoubted challenges of growing up, whether that's the agonies and anxieties and confusions of being a child, going through puberty, what have you, the stresses and strains of facing exams, just being educated, that they will see that through the prism of mental health. And I think that what we should be doing is reassuring young people about these challenges, that they are perfectly all right, and I worry that we're in danger of pathologising them. I worry about a fait accompli situation, and that point was emphasised by a recent report, because since we last discussed this, a shocking revelation has emerged, based actually on a question that was put here in this House by Lord Lothian, that revealed that children under 18 are being prescribed record levels of antidepressant drugs, a 57% increase over the last 4 years. And to note that 5 to 12-year-olds, the prescription of antidepressant drugs has gone up 40%, 5 to 12-year-olds. Now that could be refuting everything I've said, that it could mean that that means that there's an exponential growth of mental health problems amongst the young. But indeed, experts have responded to this by saying, psychiatric experts and psychologists, by saying that these figures are staggering and dangerous. And in fact, Professor Sami Timini calls this a generation pathologised, by adults steering the young towards medical diagnosis that's not appropriate, and that itself then leads to treatment, which is so often pharmacological. And this medicalisation, of course, can have catastrophic impact on the young. Another expert, Professor Spada, talks of the dangers of this, and that adult neuroses about the young will lead them on to taking drugs that are highly addictive and will create a dependency. So I think there's a real warning here that we don't just say there's a growth in mental health problems and let it run its course. I also think that the young themselves can then develop a dependence, not just on drugs, but on the therapeutic labels that we've been giving them and socialised them into in their school years. Finally, the amendment uses an odd phrase, actually, that's just been referred to, which is to explore, quote, how mental health is affected by their schooling, which I thought sounded rather accusatory, almost a bit conspiratorial. And I think it's especially ironic when what we do have ample evidence of is it was the lack of schooling in the lockdown period, which does seem to have done a huge amount of psychological damage, combined with fear-based messaging over the last couple of years. So I'd really urge us to not put this into law, and to, if anything, I'd like to have a more open discussion about the real problem of mental health and what it emanates from. Finally, I'm glad to see that Ofsted has been removed from the equation, because it was in earlier amendments. But I still dread that the Secretary of State is being told to publish a report on the actions taken by schools to improve mental health. I think this will inevitably distract from the core purpose, which is actually about the minds of young people, but it should be about improving their minds educationally, not playing amateur psychology or psychiatry in the classroom.